Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Tavares, and on behalf of the Miami University Alumni Association, I want to welcome you to tonight's Miami Women program. Tonight's panel is not only a celebration of the Miami Initiative for Advancing, Mentoring, and Investing in Women, aka Miami Women, but our panelists are also members of the 2020 honorees of the 18 to the Last 9 program. Think of it like a 30 under 30, 40 under 40. The Miami's 18 to the Last 9 is an annual celebration of recent grads who have made an impact in their field in the last 9 years since they've left Miami. It's also a fun little play on our founding year, 1809. See what we did there? Thank you to our panelists and our moderator for their time tonight. And thank you to everybody who submitted questions in advance. We also welcome your participation live. So feel free to ask questions or share comments using the Ask a Question button below the video, and we'll try to take as many as we can. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to tonight's moderator and my fellow Miami Women Giving Circle member, Chelsea De Giorgi. Chelsea is a clinical and sports psychologist. She is a sports psychologist at Ohio State University, where her role is to provide mental health and performance enhancement services to student athletes and consultation to key stakeholders within the athletic department. Chelsea graduated in 2007 from Miami University with a BA in psychology and a minor in business leadership and management, and a BS in health and sports studies. Chelsea has stayed involved in the chapter level, and she served a 3-year term on the best board ever, the Miami University Alumni Association Board of Directors. Chelsea, how are you doing? It's really good to see you again. And I'm going to turn it, hi. I'm going to turn it over to you.
You know, we're doing this for a year, and I'm still figuring out mute and unmute.
Yeah, I know. It happens. That's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you now to introduce our panel for tonight, and I will see everyone at the end of the evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's always a pleasure to see you. And congratulations to each of our honorees for the 18 of the Last 9 program for this past year. We're really glad you're able to join us tonight as we continue this week's celebration of Miami Women. As a member of Miami Women and as a part of the Giving Circle Steering Committee, I get to see firsthand what a difference it makes when we get to come together for a common cause. Tonight's panel features 3 Miami University alums who are creating change in the world. I encourage you to read their full bios online, where you'll just see how impressive they are. My little blurbs that I'm about to give certainly don't do them justice, so head on over and read a little bit more. We have joining us tonight Kiana Daniels, class of 2011. She's the CEO of KMD Empowerment Consulting. Kiana is an empowerment coach, entrepreneur, change agent, super connector, ecosystem builder, and servant leader in both of her communities in Dayton and St. Louis. Thank you for joining us. Catherine Mead graduated from Miami in 2012, and she's a developer at Sparkbox. She builds responsive websites up and down the stack, focusing on enterprise-level JavaScript applications and design systems. And Allie Pearson, who's a 2015 graduate, she's a senior brand manager at Procter & Gamble, where she develops strategy for the Herbal Essences businesses. I have to say, when I read that, it takes me right back to college. Herbal Essences was my only hair product that I used in college. So always fun to have a Miami connection that connects me back to my Miami time.
Awesome.
Welcome, Kiana, Catherine, and Allie. I thank you so much for being here. Tonight we're gonna frame the conversation around the 2 tenets of Miami Women's, which is in advancing and mentoring, really important themes. And so I'm gonna go through and ask some questions, and I'm super excited to hear the answers. We didn't practice the questions and answers, so I don't know these answers, and I'm really excited to hear them. So I guess I'd love to start with knowing, how did your time at Miami kind of shape where you are now, create opportunities for you? Were there any particular women throughout your time at Miami or since then who've made a difference for you? I'll make it easy, and I'll ask Catherine to lead us off, and then I'll let you guys kind of take the floor.
Sure, absolutely. There were many women, a lot of my peers I met. I was an education major. I know I work in technology now, but the education department is full of amazing women. But one of the people who maybe accidentally left a big impact on me was Penny Manick. She worked in the accounts payable office and helped me get my first job as a student. So I got to work in the accounts payable office, mostly scanning in paper receipts, which is something 10 years ago, to digitize them. But that way I got to learn sort of the inner workings of how student organization funding worked at the company, and also some basics in accounting. So that same year when I was a freshman, I was elected as treasurer of the Miami Electronic Gaming Association, and also a professional organization, the National Art Education Association. But Mega was a big deal for me. So while I was at the university, I think my junior year, I was vice president of Mega. We had a regular roster of 179 members, which came to the majority of our big events. The org, I knew the process for requesting equipment thanks to that job in the accounts payable office. So we were able to get like $12,000 worth of video game equipment every year, host events every Friday, and I got really valuable experience that way. That organization, I wanted to have a Halloween party, so we hosted a Halloween party in connection with the Strategy Gaming Club, SGC, and that 10 years later, now those combined orgs exist as the League of Geeks. They run this huge recon event on campus, and I was an officer with them for their very first year, but then I eventually got a job at a tech startup as an operations manager, because I had that accounting experience, and that job actually led to like some of my volunteer activities, and the job I have today was all the way through that process. So it's a little bit around the belt, but she made a huge difference for me.
I love that so much. I mean, I love hearing like it's almost more fun those tangential ways that we get into these really cool spaces. I'm totally like the nerd out that my degree is what I do. But I just think it's really cool. Like, right, that's relationships. That shows that through various relationships, you end up maybe somewhere that you didn't imagine being. Kiana, what about you?
Yeah, there were two women who particularly had an impact on me, a very positive impact. And the first is Michelle Thomas, who worked in the business school. And the second is Rosalind Mason. And I am still in contact with Rosalind Mason, who is now my adopted aunt. So I actually just went to see her down in Cincinnati about 2 weeks ago. And so both of those women really poured into me while I was at Miami. Being a Black young woman at Miami was challenging. It was a culture shock for me. And so actually, I have to give much props to my freshman dorm advisor, Jeff, who was a male, who he saw that I was kind of not finding my way and I needed support and a system to really help me stay and thrive at Miami. And so he introduced me to both Michelle and Rosalind. And from there, they just really took me under their wing and made introductions and connections. And honestly, it became a very personal relationship because they also invited me into their home, and I was going to office hours all the time and just really needed that guidance so that I could really find my way at Miami, but not lose myself at the same time. And they were just very supportive of me. And helped me to really thrive while I was there. And so I was able to take advantage of all of the opportunities that were placed before me at Miami. So I'm super grateful to Jeff first, and then to both Rosalind and Michelle. And even once I graduated, I am still a person who loves to build and cultivate relationships. So I would send them updates on how I was doing in my professional career and also in my graduate school career when I went to Washington University in St. Louis. And so I just have to say that Miami, one of the things at Miami for any students who are currently there, or even for alumni who may be going to grad school, finding your tribe of people and a support system is very helpful when you need guidance. And those relationships, they transcend well beyond the 4 years that we're at undergrad. Because like I said, now Rosalind Mason is Aunt Roz to me. And we almost have developed a friendship now that I'm an adult, right? So we can go and have lunch and have wine and different things like that. And so it has really made an impact in my life. And so I'm very grateful for that. So just those tribes and women pouring into women is kind of some of the work that I do today, kind of outside of my professional, my professional role, is just making sure that I create safe spaces for other women to thrive and to be seen and to be heard, just like those women, Michelle and Rosalind, did for me while I was at Miami.
I mean, Miami is a place where relationships are forged, right? Lifelong relationships, and it's really cool to hear about those. Allie, tell us about your time.
Yeah, I have to echo Kiana first. Michelle Thomas is the bomb. I smiled so big when I heard that name. That's great. I feel like Miami was really rich with opportunities, whether it was capstones or student orgs or intramurals or opportunities to work with professors on projects. And I found myself really fortunate to get to meet some amazing upperclassmen when I was a freshman who were women. And Molly Babington and Maggie Byrne and Chrissy Woodrum, they were all great examples as a freshman. I could look up and say, wow, they're amazing. And they really modeled the way when it came to taking advantage of all of those opportunities and continuing to say yes and dive into new things and fail forward and learn. And that was super helpful. And then on the professor side, I had a professor, Debbie Coleman, and then also an assistant professor in the Entrepreneurship Institute, Jess Reading, who are also women and incredibly talented in their fields. And what was really helpful having that influence as well is they were great encouragers. They were always, whether I felt great about myself or not great about myself, they were constantly encouraging me and telling me how capable I am and how smart I am and how I'm working in a good direction on different problems and things that I was pursuing. And so just having somebody there to, boost your confidence is super helpful with momentum, because you start earning small wins. And and it's just incredibly helpful. And it gives you as I said, momentum to continue to try harder things or things that are more stretching. And I feel really grateful to have met all of those women for that reason.
Thank you guys so much for sharing that. Again, I often refer to Miami as the greatest place on earth, and these are examples of why that is. So you're all young alums, but you don't become an 18 of 9 honoree without doing extraordinary, wonderful things. So you've certainly established yourselves in your respective fields. Kiana, you mentioned this a little bit. You gave us a teaser, but I'd love to hear about, now that you are in a more established place, are there specific and strategic ways that you're trying to kind of look in the other direction and help pull women up and help to kind of guide them to follow in your footsteps?
Absolutely. So even though I'm not seasoned, if you will, succession planning is very important, because like now, we're not staying in careers for 10, 15, 20 years. It looks more like 2 to 3 years, or maybe at most 5. And so I'm actually one of those people who I kind of stay a place 2 to 3 years, and then I kind of elevate to another level, and not really always because I'm intentionally doing that, but just because, God will allow those situations to happen in my life. And so I'm always thinking about, I do absolutely want to leave every place that I work or that I encounter in a better condition than I found it. And so thinking about the next person who's going to be able to continue this legacy, or even just bring in fresh perspectives and being able to think outside of the box, is something that's important to me. And so I'm kind of doing that now. So the work that I do currently is in the entrepreneurial space. So economic development, helping entrepreneurs and startups and small businesses start and scale their businesses. And as I'm a more of a big picture person. And so I'm thinking now, regionally, we're helping people, and locally, but what about statewide? What about national? And so my sights are set on that. And so I'm already thinking about, well, who can I bring in to my position to be able to continue the work that I've done, but also bring their own perspective, so that they can really plant themselves in this role. And I think it's important, and it's not always because you're the CEO of a company that you need to do succession planning, because thinking about how do we grow the talent and how do we create pipelines into certain career fields and industries. And there's not a lot of young people that are working in my field. doing entrepreneurial development and support services and things like that, in economic development in that way. And so I would love to see more millennials and young professionals in this space. So I'm always thinking about and talking to my team about, okay, how do we create programs and write them into the grants so that we can build the talent? Maybe people don't know that this career is an option, but why don't we start talking about it to them so that they know that it's not just like, tech and STEM, those are great. But there are also industries where people need the support services to get to that next level. And so I definitely think succession planning is important, and mentorship really is really important to me as well, whether it's a female or a male. I think that if I'm a super connector, so I kind of do this in my sleep. Anytime that I meet a person, the connection may not always be for me. So my wheels are always turning about, oh, well, I need to connect this person with this person because this seems like a wonderful collaboration. And so for that reason, when I meet younger professionals who either want to be where I am or they have aspirations to be somewhere else, I'm always available to make connections and introductions so that they can excel and have the same experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have. So it's just something that I think is necessary. And regardless if we're older or younger, peer mentorship and motivation of each other is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. When we think about advancing women around us, I think it's really easy to think of our times in college and like we talked about with the previous question, people who help us grow up. But I think that that lateral kind of growth and advancement is just as important, that, being able to kind of cross mentor. And you hear a lot about it with, millennials and Gen Z mentoring up, especially in the digital age. And so I think that that's a great point that, I think the initial thought is, how do you advance other women? How do you mentor those, who've not made it to where you are yet? But I think we have to look bigger than that moving women into spaces where they aren't, or elevating the voice of a woman who's a peer, I think is just as important. Catherine, Allie, I'm curious to hear about your thoughts in terms of how you found ways to advance women around you.
Yeah, I can jump. Oh, go ahead, Catherine. She made you big.
I won the lottery. Yeah. So this is sort of like, it goes back to when I started working at a tech startup. I was having a meeting with my boss at the time, the accountants, and the same time, one of our marketing folks was having a meeting with a nonprofit organization, and it was a tech startup in downtown Cincinnati. So everybody meets at the bar. Our meeting wrapped up early, and we crashed their meeting. And it was a really amazing moment because my boss and the marketing person are both men, and we're meeting with this organization called Girl Develop It. And Girl Develop It was an organization, past tense, it doesn't really exist anymore due to some national challenges. So the organization, the two women, they were both named Becky. They were amazing. And they were just looking for funding. And they were like, oh, you have teaching experience? We need women to teach our coding classes to adult women. We don't care if you know how to code or if you have coding experience. We need teachers who are women to be role models. So that was sort of my gateway into kind of the code world. I took a ton of classes in college due to Miami Plan and thematic sequence was the thing when I was in college in computer science. So I ended up teaching, I think, 14 intro to HTML and CSS classes with Girl Develop It, with about 27 students at the biggest. So that's 350 women who came to Girl Develop It classes. I TA'd numerous other classes, and it was just having the confidence to see a woman doing this made a huge difference. And most of them were not career switchers. They were graphic designers or admin or people who needed some level of code skills to feel confident in their roles, or project managers. So that was really empowering. And I moved to Dayton for my apprenticeship. So I was a developer apprentice at Sparkbox, and I helped get Girl Develop It off the ground. And when Girl Develop, and I eventually became a chapter leader. So I think that one of the things they did right was every 2 years you have a chapter leader switch over, because you want to let other women have those experiences and let other women learn to be community leaders. And I thought that was amazing. So It's Date and Code Together, and another one of my amazing coworkers runs it. So we pass it on to her, and I get to focus every day in the same apprenticeship I went through 5 years ago. It's like the biggest, almost every woman and person of color on our team that is a developer was an apprentice formerly. So we grow a lot of talent that way. And they stick around. So I get to dedicate, I lead like the second phase of our apprenticeship and teach some of those same concepts to people a much smaller level. They're apprentices, but they're paid. It's $15 an hour. It's a 6-month apprenticeship, and it's like really solid job experience. So I kind of call it paying it forward and help all those women. But outside of that, I mean, I remember a time when I had one other coworker on the development team, and she's an amazing technical director now. And we were like the only women on the development team. So now that I am a more senior developer who's a woman on the team, I spend a lot of my time like sponsoring my peers, sharing salary information, sharing the things that have succeeded for me, like talking through their days is really important. Be like, hey, this stresses me out. Does this stress you out? How can I manage this? And just like not true mentorship, but just one-on-one conversations where they can hear that like they're doing a good job. And obviously, like every time they succeed, I send a DM and Slack to their boss, be like, you're doing great. This person is doing great. Right. So, yeah.
I think when it comes to mentoring, I'm about 6 years at P&G right now, and I love spending time with our new hires and interns. And it's such a fun way to be able to make them build connections, as Kiana was talking earlier, like being a super connector, connecting them to other people around P&G to make it feel like home faster, but also to lend a hand when it comes to onboarding, regardless of what category they're serving in, because nothing's worse than just trying to slowly make your way into figuring out your work plan and things like that. So the more we can provide encouragement and resources and thoughts on their work, and the faster that they feel really confident in what they're doing. And so that's been excellent. But as you were saying, Chelsea, earlier about mentoring up, I think that something that I've really tried to be more intentional about in my career lately is just being a champion for other people's work, especially women. So offering my eyes to what other people are working on, whether it's in my sphere or not. Whether I work on Herbal, but if that's talking to somebody on Pantene or Head and Shoulders, or even in a different category, to lend a perspective or a point of view to help with work, but even more so just to speak highly of what you see working really well in the business and who's behind it. So, there are countless times where I tell my boss's boss, hey, my boss is doing really, really great in these areas, or this is work I think is really important that they're leading, or this is how I think we can make this more influential. And I think it's really easy to get stuck in only focusing on what you're doing or what your work plan is or how to advance your ideas. And I found that it goes a really long way when you spot what other people are doing really well and are being a quick first follower and are helping champion other people's work, because it makes the other women look great because they're smart and talented and are producing great results. And it also goes to show that you have leadership and ability to identify what you think is working in a business. So I've tried to be more intentional about that lately too.
As a psychologist, these answers just thrill me, about just, it's a lot of positive psychology and a lot of relationship building and positive reinforcement. And these are the things that work. And so it's always fun when I can turn on my psychology hat and be like, you guys are killing it. I want to move on to talking a little bit more specifically about mentoring and building network. I think that you guys have touched on that as well. And I think that I would be curious to know, given your experiences so far, good or bad, I would love to hear about what you think the most important elements are for women when considering building an intentional professional network. I know it's easy. I probably accept 98% of the LinkedIn connections that I'm asked, for. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I think that there's a lot more ability to build passive professional networks and passive relationships. And so, I think it's really valuable to think about more intentional professional networks and relationship building. I think, Kiana, as a super connector, I'd love to hear, what you think the most important elements are for women to consider in doing this.
Absolutely. I think that first and foremost, intentional and authentic relationships are really important. So identifying, when you meet with someone, I say I don't network, I connect with people. To me, networking is very transactional, and transactions will come, but I feel like when you intentionally and genuinely and sincerely build connections and relationships with people, by the time you get to the ask, it'll be there. People will be asking you, what can I do for you? So I always say that my business relationships are 90% personal and 10% business, because if you know anything about relationship building, it takes empathy and it takes trust. And even in business, which it translates to business as well, I think for women, the advice that I would give is to first know yourself and what you're trying to get out of a situation. And then be intentional about identifying individuals that you would like to connect with, and do your research. Do your research on that individual to see, what is it that you really connect with them? What do you like about them? Is it their style of leadership? Is it the way that they hold themselves? Is it the way that they are transparent and vulnerable in their leadership, or in the way that they handle themselves? And then that way, when you connect with them, because most times busy women who are in leadership, they don't have a lot of time, and they meet with a lot of people. They have a lot of requests to be mentored by other young women or even peers. And so they're looking for certain things when you reach out to them. And that is that you've done your research on them, and that you actually know what you want to get out of the relationship. But also they want to be able to resonate too. I think we are kind of seeing a shift now. A lot of people are not going along with the status quo of the suit and tie and things like that. People are really desiring real connection with people, even in professional world. And so I think that if I can give any advice, it's just to be your authentic self and to build genuine connections. Again, the transactions and what's in it for me, that's a valid question. I think everybody should have. Even going into a relationship where it's a genuine connection, you're being your authentic self, but the transaction or whatever the ask is always going to come. Another thing that I would recommend is to think outside of the box, kind of if you know something about someone that another person has told you about a person, I would say just kind of take that with a grain of salt. Just because there are a lot of connections that we miss because we were introduced or told something by another person. And so therefore we won't be able to build our own relationships with that person, where it could be very beneficial to us and maybe very impactful. And so I've had my own situations where I've had people to kind of warn me about someone, and I kind of suspended judgment and made that connection on my own. And I'm still very much great friends with some of these people. And then also in regard to people who push the envelope, I'm an envelope pusher and I love other envelope pushers. So of course that rocks the boat for some people and it turns people off. But for me, that is something that makes me want to go towards them even more, because I can see that they can stand on their own, but they can also hold systems accountable. They can think outside of the box and be innovative, and they can be really revolutionary, if you will, or dynamic in their leadership. And so to me, that's what stands out to me when I connect with people. And so for young ladies and other women who are seeking mentorship relationships, I would just first say, who are you first, and what do you want out of the relationship, so that you're not wasting people's time also. And make genuine connections, because you just never know what could happen. Like Aunt Roz, that was a connection to help me stay at Miami. And I guess 10 plus years later, or I'm not really sure, my math is off. Actually, yes, I've been graduated 10 years. So it is 10 plus years later, we have a relationship that was able to blossom into something else, which I'm so grateful for, because like I said, you know, I get awards and accolades now, which are great and I'm grateful for, but like she's always there. She's literally always there, and I can call on her at any moment, because I not only developed a relationship with her in an academic way because she was an academic counselor, but we developed a personal relationship where she's now family. And so it was because I was able to be my authentic and vulnerable self about what it is that I needed or didn't know I needed, you know, like, so not knowing what you need is okay too, to let somebody know so that they can help guide you to where you want to be. So I would say that.
I would say that that's phenomenal. And I don't know that there's that much more to add, although I have a specific question, a follow-up for each, Catherine and Allie, in thinking about your last answers that now I want to know. Allie, you talked about, you know, getting to interface with the new hires, interns, stuff like that at P&G, and trying to make sure their onboarding experience is smooth and trying to kind of help them navigate some of those early days. I would be curious if there's anything specific that you kind of coach them up on in terms of building a network within a company that's pretty big. And if there's specific tips that you learned during your time in your early days in P&G that you then impart on young women and young men, but in terms of thinking about networking, even just within your own organization.
Yeah, ironically, I just met with a Miamian yesterday. We were just having this conversation. She's graduating in a couple weeks. But well, first off, when they're Miamians, it's really easy because P&G has an amazing group of Miamians who love welcoming other Miamians into P&G, and they do such a great job. Everybody obviously loves talking about their experience on campus and welcoming new people in. So it's very easy to build connections when I know they're coming from Miami. But yeah, P&G is a really big company. I think especially as a new hire, you come in and or as an intern, you're coming in and you're trying to figure out how to make an impact in a short period of time, especially if you have just a short internship, or how to even wrap your head around your work plan, most of which you've probably never seen before, figuring out how to apply what you're learning in school to the business needs that P&G has. And so I think where I've built a lot of coaching skills is helping people quickly understand what they're working on and connecting them to people who can start to lead them down the path of making progress on their projects. And so most of that comes with a lot of multifunctional. I'm in brand management, but when you get better and better at coaching, multifunctional people ask you to help manage their, design interns or design co-ops as well. And so it's fun to be able to work with people multifunctionally and to help connect them to resources that will give them a broad perspective of how the business operates and who works on what and how to leverage the skills and talents of other people to push your project forward. And I think that's a super important skill in brand management, but just knowing your way around the organization is really helpful to be able to make progress. And so everybody at P&G tends to be overly excited to meet with new people, because I think what these interns and co-ops and new hires don't realize is they come with fresh perspective that we don't have anymore. We've been looking at toothpaste and shampoo and body wash for a really long time now. And so there are so many great skills and talents that they bring to the table that they undervalue. And so when we can encourage that and learn so much about them, where you can encourage those skills to show up in their deliverables, but also to quickly enable them to be able to navigate the organization to get people to help with projects and provide perspective multifunctionally is really helpful. So yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of my job, because you get to take a step out of what you're doing every day and you feel like you're helping enable work in other categories. It's really wonderful.
Nice. So Kiana, you talked about kind of the casting a wide net and meeting people and connecting people and kind of talking about, knowing that if you're the reacher outer, the person you're reaching out to may not be the person, but they may have the person to connect you to. So kind of really broadening that net. Now, you talked really about kind of looking at bigger picture and understanding that building those relationships with people and letting them help you understand the transferability of your skills and how those can be enhanced. And Catherine, your experiences have really been in a space where women are still kind of a minority, and where the voices of women are being promoted, but there still aren't enough of them to make as much noise. And so I would be curious to hear kind of how, especially when you kind of were teaching these women to code, right? And people who needed these skill sets to feel more confident in their job, which tells me that they were lacking some confidence in certain aspects of their job. I'm curious how that networking experience with them for you, and any encouragement that you gave them in addition to the actual coding assistance, what that experience was like in terms of encouraging them in building those types of networks.
Yeah, I have this one woman who would take my classes multiple times just because she wasn't super comfortable using her computer. And, we would teach her how to use the laptop she had while also teaching her to code, which was kind of heartbreaking, but also wonderful. But the large majority of the women, we would hear, on the opposite side, I had a woman who was like an engineer at the Air Force Base 15 years ago, right? Was doing technical stuff a long time ago and just wanted to refresh her skills. So there were we have a saying at my work where everyone has something to teach and everyone has something to learn. So even though I was the teacher in that scenario, I learned so much from these women, and they made me feel great. And they would always say thank you all the time. I do I'm sure that there are a lot of people at Miami. I didn't switch to be a CS major because it was not super great gender balance at the time, but it's getting so much better. And I know women in tech is scary on the internet. But it is honestly so much better than it was 5 years ago, because companies have all of these women who are, getting there and are speaking up for the other women on the team, hopefully speaking up for the women of color on their team, especially, and encouraging them. So it's a super rewarding experience. We had a time last year, it's different now because of hiring changes, but where 50% of our development team were women. And that is unbelievable. It blows my mind. And I want to see those statistics continue to grow. Technology is an amazing field for women because you have the opportunity to work from home a lot more often. You have a flexible schedule. The salaries are usually really good. What I make now is 4 times what I made as a teacher. So, right, it's just ridiculously good. And I don't think everybody should learn to code. Right. I know a lot of people the culture is you have to code as a hobby. I don't think it's fun. You have to have a learning perspective, right? Because you're always teaching yourself. But I think that's a key to success in any field. So it is definitely a good way forward. But I want to echo what Kiana was saying.
I think we've frozen, but that's okay. We can circle back.
Now I want to know what she was going to refer to.
I know.
Just hanging.
Oh, well, we can circle back once we get reconnected. I want to make sure we have time for audience questions. And so I want to ask one more question for each of you to answer. And then maybe we can open it up for questions from our audience. So looking ahead, thinking about the rest of this post-COVID year, moving into the next year, what do you know that it holds for you? What do you hope that this next year holds for you? Are there specific ways that you have either already planned to kind of fitting in advancement and mentoring of women? Or is this panel and this week of Miami Women making you think about it even more? And so thinking about kind of this next year, what are your hopes and dreams for the next year?
I am actually pregnant right now with our first baby. So baby Pearson is due in September. We're so excited. And I have benefited so much already from moms at P&G who have told me what maternity leave is like and how much to take and what do you have to register for? And, it's just this whole nother level of mentorship on how to balance motherhood and a growing family with your career and what you want to achieve. Lots of P&Gers are type A achievers and they're, excited about their careers. And it's just super helpful to gain perspective on what it looks like to balance your family with what your career aspirations are. And I've had excellent mentors over the last 2 or 3 months that have put me so far ahead of where I would be at by myself. My knowledge is 0 in this area, and so lower than 0. And so I'm working to close the gap there. But so I just feel really grateful to be able to benefit from that. And then also I'm excited to step into this new season and to learn what it's like to be a mom and learn what it's like to be a mom that's has more facets and identity to her than just mom. And so I think experiencing that will be super exciting and a challenge and wonderful, and will equip me to continue to empower and empathize with women in the future. And so I think I'm going to be on the receiving end of a lot more mentorship in the upcoming months and such, but I'm looking forward to putting that in my arsenal to be able to help people in the future too.
I will warn you that new motherhood comes with a lot of unsolicited and unwanted mentorship. Have a mostly positive experience. I will say that for me, I'm like so excited for you. We've met like now twice in 2 days and that's it. But I'm just so excited. I think that for me, having a kid and having a daughter has totally changed my perspective, and maybe it shouldn't have, and whatever, maybe I should have been better at this before. But I think that the way that we think about shifting identities, whatever they are, I experienced that with marriage as well, but with motherhood, thinking about, like we really got to up the ante now, like with this getting mentorship and providing mentorship and providing mentorship to fresh baby boys, right? About empowering women and the opportunity that you have is so exciting. So congratulations. That's super exciting.
Thank you so much.
Why don't we let Catherine jump in since we lost her briefly, and we were really excited about what you into. So feel free to wrap that around, or is gone with the internet cut out.
I was just gonna say that Kiana is really smart and to just listen to her the whole time. Yeah, I don't know what happened. My cat does like to sit on the router, so that's a thing. But as for this year, like technology, the web industry has really boomed because a lot has gone online. People have like really competitive hiring needs. So for the first year in the 5 years I've worked at Sparkbox, we're hosting a second apprenticeship. And I am like overwhelmingly excited because this is like my whole personality. My entire life journey has been about paying it forward. I went no contact with my parents when I was 19 years old. So without all of the people in my life to support me, I wouldn't have gotten very far. And I've been paying it forward ever since. So like this apprenticeship I find it really fulfilling. And I find a lot of people come through it with really positive experiences and their whole lives change. So the fact that we're hosting a second one this year, we get to impact even more lives and hopefully like help people like change things around and move forward. It's really awesome. I'm going to plug it and say, like, if you want to know more about this, my email is cat @heysparkbox.com. So email me, I'll talk you up, and it's a really excellent experience. Otherwise I like miss my book club and I really want to like see my book club in person again. So like that is going to happen soon.
Sometimes it's the little things that keep us going. They seemed so little before all of this, and now those little things have become far bigger. Kiana, what's this year going to look like for you? What do you got brewing? What are you hoping for?
Well, first, congratulations to Allie and Catherine. I think both of those things that you guys have going on, the baby and then the new apprenticeship, I think is amazing. So congratulations. You know what? This year is already a roller coaster of new things that I did not plan, but I am fully surrendering to the process so that I can just be present in this season. So I am currently in a certificate program for commercial real estate development. It is something that I really want to do. I didn't really plan on starting a new career, and I think that's what I'm doing by learning it. I thought I was elevating what I was already doing, but I think I need to get into the career to actually get the experience. So it looks like I'm going to be doing that. I don't have any kind of definitive answers to like what that looks like right now until the program is over. I'm just soaking it all up. And to Allie's point, I am in a space where I am less knowledgeable, and I am very excited and invigorated by that because I love to be poured into and to have mentorship. And so I've actually been reaching out to a lot of our subject matter experts that join our calls for the program. And it's just been so amazing just what I'm learning because I'm a student again, and it feels really good. Another thing that I've done that I didn't plan, and it'll be launching, I think, at the end of May, is a podcast. I am going to be launching a podcast with a friend of mine, Bridget, about healing, the healing journey for women. So it's called Tears, Tides, and Transformation. And it's just about, at some point on the journey of life, women and men go through a healing process from past and present trauma. And we want to normalize the conversation around the healing process and what it looks like and what it entails, but also the conversation around mental wellness. And, for women specifically, we do so much. We do so much in our personal lives, at work, in the community. And we just need to be able to have safe spaces where we can come together and talk about things that we're dealing with, and to really just kind of be seen and heard. And so that's something that I'm really excited about because it is a passion of mine. I'm also on my own healing journey. And again, it's just like a lot of surprises that are just popping out of the woodwork that I'm just like, okay, we're going to do this. So let's just go.
I'm a sucker for a good podcast. I'm obviously a sucker for a podcast about mental wellness. You're speaking my language. There's an Instagram person, the Mom Psychologist, and she talks about getting crispy. And so that idea that women, we tend to kind of grind ourselves to the point of just kind of having frazzled nerve endings, right? Physical and mental perspective. And so she calls it getting crispy. And I really like that idea of what do we do when we're feeling a little bit crispy and how do we have those resources? And so I'm super excited. Listen to podcasts when I run. I hate running. I like podcasts when you pair them. It's just so much easier. So you'll have to let us know when that's gonna drop so I can subscribe and give me something to run to this summer. Thank you guys so much. Now it's time for some questions from our viewers. Don't forget that you can submit a question or a comment in the Ask a Question button. We're going to throw a couple at you. Obviously, we don't have all the time in the world, but we want to really get in a couple of questions. So you've all talked about the importance of making connections with other women who can serve as a part of a network. But what advice or tips do you have or kind of life hacks for people who maybe don't feel like they're so great at making connections, maybe feel like they struggle with that? What are a couple pro tips that they can think about that they can kind of take with them to make that a little easier, or one little change they can make to kind of have more fruitful experiences in that space?
I have one tangible tip to offer. I go to Crossroads Church here in Cincinnati at Uptown, and I met a friend there named Kenzie Harmon, and she is actually a Miamian too, but we didn't know each other. She was an architect major, and I was in the business school, or she was in the architecture building. She's interior design. And so we bonded over our Miami experience, and Ken's is super introverted, and she, standing in the middle of like the courtyard at church, she was like, I don't know who to talk to or how to get plugged in here. I'm newly graduated. Like, how do I even start my life? And it's tough to make that specific transition, but I had been in Cincinnati for 2 or 3 years and I'm very extroverted. And I was like, Ken's, come on, time to get involved in this, and this. And so just as Ken sort of attached onto my hip, she met tons of friends through that became her own friends and things like that. And so I think like my one tangible tip is if you're, all of us have different gifts and all of us have different strengths and skills. And if yours is not connecting with people, that's okay. And if yours is being, if you're an introvert, that's okay. And I think the tip there, or what Ken tells people now, is that you find yourself an extrovert, or you find a super connector, and let them do the work for you. And Ken's is just, her gift is, man, she knows people so well. She's such a good listener, and she is so good at remembering everything you say and really building deep connections. And it's just the awkward, like, hey, nice to meet you, that's just not so fun. And so if you can find somebody to bridge that gap for you, like leverage their gifts and skills. And then as you build relationships that you're comfortable with, then you can kind of bring yours to the table. So hopefully that's helpful.
Allie, I also think it's a really important thought that you just said without saying directly, which is, Ken's gift is remembering and being able to remember information. That's connecting. That's a really core part of connecting, right? So I think that there's maybe another piece of examining what makes you think you're a bad connector, and find someone the extrovert who can get that initial connection made, but she's a great connector. She's a phenomenal connector. She just needs that initial push. So I think that's a great tip of finding someone who balances those strengths and maybe rethinking about not being great at making connections. Kiana, I'm sure that you've got some tangible tips for us.
Well, I definitely second what Allie said. That's a great tip. And just remembering that not everybody has to be an extrovert. That is okay. But I would say, like, really and truly, I think it starts with, don't overthink the connection. I think a lot of people overthink it and they overanalyze and things like that. It really is super, I'm not going to say simple because it's not simple for a lot of people, but I would say really finding things that genuinely resonates with you to connect with that person. So if it's not something that's in a career field or something like that, if that's too intimidating, what actually does matter to you? And just starting off with like a conversation, or if you're in a space with people that are obviously in a place where you like to go, maybe it's a hobby, say tennis or something like that. I think that like being able to connect on areas where you have some similar interests is a great way to start the connection for people who find it a little bit more difficult. And then I would say also, to Allie's point, is to have people who may have a connection to somebody, make a warm connection for you so that it's not so awkward of a cold introduction, just reaching out to people. To me, those are the basic things that you can do. But the first, to me, that's most important is not overthinking it and not thinking that it has to be perfect. Because if you connect in a general way, again, that connection can build. And it doesn't have to be anything superficial like business and things like that. It could just be something as simple as, well, we both like to fly drones. Hopefully that's helpful.
All right, Catherine's our resident self-identified introvert.
Yeah.
3 of us we're there. So what about a tip from personal experience on how to make those connections? It sounds like you've told a lot of stories about successfully doing so, that you were able to make that happen.
I'm the planner. So even though I'm an introvert, somebody's like, let's do the thing. And then I'm like, okay, I put it on the calendar. But for me, like, I think that this is definitely true in tech, and it's probably true in other fields too. But when you see another woman, especially at work, she initially, like the initial thought is that they're competition, right? Like only one woman is going to be a manager. Only one woman is going to get a raise. Only one woman is going to be recognized. And I think like throwing that in the garbage is the best way to go, because you are going to make great connections with the women you work with. They are not the competition. So sort of a follow-up for me is just like asking people all the time, like, hey, you want to get a coffee? Hey, do you want to have lunch with me? Hey, I saw that thing you did. That's really cool. Or I like the sticker on your car. And just like being really, like Kiana said earlier, like super genuine all the time, and not like ask more than once, because they may be defensive at first. Like they may have been burned in the past. So just keep asking. My boss right now, he found out that I would not go to things because even if I got invited, I felt like they were just inviting me out of pity. So he would like loudly invite me to anything. So I'd walk into work, he'd be like, Catherine, you are invited to work today. And it may sound ridiculous, but eventually like I started to feel welcome. So that's good.
I love that. All right, we have time for one more. So we've heard about your various experiences about how to be a mentor, a mentee, a connector, build relationships, and how to succeed well. And obviously you've shown that you can do that. But how have you learned from failures? How have you learned from some of the bigger challenges you might have had?
I guess I'll start this one off. Well, in my consulting business, that is one of the things that's in the mission, is to embrace failure because it's inevitable. Everybody does it. We can't run from it. We can't hide from it. So I think fail forward, fail fast, and learn the lessons. And so for me, I'm very intentional about learning the lessons in every situation, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. It doesn't matter what it is. What was the lesson? Because especially if it was hard, I don't want to go through it again. And so I think being intentional about learning the lessons has really helped me to navigate through the hardships and challenges of life. Just because, again, like I don't like pain and I don't like hard. I like to work smart. And so I'm very strategic about things when they happen to me. And so I don't always have, I guess maturity and wisdom has taught me that I don't always have to go through a situation myself. I can watch other people and see that they're bumping their heads and say, okay, well, they're not doing something right. How do I learn from that situation? And so I would just say, embrace the failures. Don't be afraid to fail, because there's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of lived experiences, and there's a lot of, lessons to be learned in those failures. And when we're afraid, I believe that when we're afraid to fail, we miss out on life, on living, on opportunities, really. Because think of the most successful people. The only reason they're successful is because they failed a million times and learned the lessons to do things, something different. So I would just say, just embrace it. It's going to happen. It is going to happen, and learn the lessons.
The concept of resilience is the ability to experience things, and then the next time we happen upon a difficult experience, to be able to call back and know that we can handle this. And so I think that speaks beautifully to the concept of resilience. Allie, Catherine, either of you, anything come to mind in terms of how you've learned from failures?
Yeah, I have an extensive failure resume. So without going into too much detail, I think one thing that I've learned to be very helpful is debriefing my failures afterwards, whether it's with my team, because I think that presents a great opportunity for humility and respect to be built, or even if it's with managers, because then they typically have even more that I could learn from failures. But my husband and I were skydivers, and every time we get to the ground after a skydive, we have an AAR, which is an after action review. And you talk about, well, how did it go? And what did I learn? And what could I do better? And I think that's just a really, we move so fast in business, and it's so hard to build discipline to just stop for a second and look backwards and debrief on what just happened. And so I think that, when it comes to, yes, it's important to learn from failures, but I think just building that discipline of having the after action review with your peers and with mentees or mentors or in any direction is an incredible practice, and it positions you to learn even more, and it positions you as somebody who's willing to own up to the failure, and that provides others with the ability to trust you to lead teams moving forward.
Catherine, anything to add?
Yeah, people a lot smarter than me say people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I think that this is definitely an important thing. So if you fail, I fail a lot. I also have a huge failure resume. I'm not even like in the career I have my degree for. But if you own your mistake and apologize if you're at fault, but do not apologize if you're not at fault. And we as women do that all the time. And figure out how to move forward. Like, make people understand, like, yes, I'm sorry you were hurt, or yes, this was a bad situation, but this is how we're going to move beyond it, and just be really encouraging and like build up your team members and be humble, and you will get through it.
You guys, you are rock stars. This was super fun. I only wish this could be in person so that we were sitting, on a stage together, and then we could have chit chat on the back end of it. Thank you so much, Kiana, Allie, Catherine, for sharing your perspectives and experiences with us tonight. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thanks for moderating.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chelsea, and all of you. I mean, Allie, failure resume is definitely my new word I'm going to use here. Thank you for that new phrase. And Catherine, my fellow introvert, I'm an extrovert for pay, and that's pretty much it. So I'm with you. So Kiana, when you're like, I'm a super connector, I'm like, I got to figure out that superpower. So thank you for sharing with us just your personalities, your kind of tips for that, because I feel very empowered just listening to you. And part of my job, I love meeting all of our alums, and I love meeting our young alums, and then kind of seeing where you are as you come along here. And I have a feeling that we'll be hearing from you three again at some point too. So I'm really excited to see where you're going to continue to go with your career. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Chelsea, thank you for being an awesome moderator. And for those of you watching, if you were empowered by this conversation, be sure to watch the remaining webinars this week during Miami Women's Week. You can find all those sessions at givetomiamioh.org/Miami Women, and they are daily the rest of this week at noon Eastern Time. On behalf of the Miami University Alumni Association, thank you for being here with us tonight, everybody. Love and honor.